נפרדים משמעון פרס, גל"צ
Israel and the world are honoring Shimon Peres as a visionary and a fighter for peace. The Nobel Prize-winning former president and prime minister of Israel died overnight.
הנשיא התשיעי, ראש הממשלה לשעבר, שמעון פרס.
President Obama gave this tribute. A light has gone out, but the hope he gave us will live and burn forever.
In my first meeting with President Peres, when I first went into the office, we had a conversation about the power of fantasy. And he said something that stuck with me. He said, "Remember, Yoni, people without fantasies don't do fantastic things." President Peres, in a recurring manner, was able to look 10, 15, 20 years into the future, see the developments, and then ask very tough questions, and then taking very tough actions in making sure that Israel is well equipped to reach that goal. So in the 50s, there were hardly 10,000 cars on the road. He would already imagine the aeronautic industry of Israel, so that Israel in 1970 would have its own airplane capability, its own electro-optic capability, things that at the time really seemed like fantasies. When you read about Ben-Gurion's vision in 1947 for the state of Israel, he looks back and says, this has been a tremendous era for science. We talk about today about exponential technologies, but think about it. In the 40s, they learned how to break the atom, to generate energy in ways that were not even conceivable before that. So he did it with aeronautics, that was industry number one. He did it with nuclear capability and nuclear research. He realized that having a strong nuclear research capability is something that Israel cannot afford itself to leave behind. What is the tech ecosystem ultimately? It's not that Israel is the best in the world in universities. It's not that it has the best IP law or the best access to capital. It crosses the critical mass on all of those dimensions of the ecosystem. And there aren't many ecosystems like that in terms of culture, in terms of willingness to fail, in terms of access to capital. A lot of those were born in 1985, when again he paid political capital to put in place very innovative public policy initiatives like backing VC, venture capital losses to attract venture capital in the late 80s. That's where nanotechnology started playing a role. Bioinformatics, neuroscience, he was smart enough and an incredible visionary to understand things that we didn't even conceive of as younger people who live in the industry. How does exponential growth in computation allow us to understand the brain better, understand neural networks, then design AI, artificial intelligence, that would then learn better about the brain? He saw it, he somehow understood it. He's what you'd call the serial entrepreneur, and this country is very grateful for that. So think about it. A country which is 70 years old with 8 million people, which 70 years ago had barely a university here, has 3 of its 6 which are publicly funded. 3 of the Israeli universities are in the top 100 most innovative universities in the world. I think that's a fantasy that was realized.
We're here at the Media Innovation Lab at IDC Herzliya. We're looking very honestly and directly on the 21st century, and we understand the trends and we understand what's going to happen, and we believe that if we're not going to do what we do, it's not going to be the type of world that we want to live in.
We have BA, we have MA, computer science, communication, and psychology students. They work in collaborative groups, and they produce projects throughout the year in an iterative process where they produce something, they quickly test it, and then produce something more advanced.
One of the trends that is already happening for many, many years is the physical-digital interaction. So we think about digital technology, we all know what it is. We think about the physical world, we all know what it is, but what is the convergence between them? What we do here is what's called humanistic technologies. And yes, technology is great, and technology is fun, and we love innovation, but technology is just technology. It's a means to an end. And we believe that IoT or this type of smart objects should become active participants in our lives. They should behave. And that's why we look very much on gestures. That if we're not going to make sure that these objects of the future are going to be more intimate and more empathic and communicate with us in this very social way, it's just going to become a very depressing 21st century.
This is the greeting machine. We purposely designed it in the simplest, most abstract form that there is in order to show through expressive gestures and movements how just a simple movement can communicate so much. So the idea comes from, for example, if we have pets at home who are waiting for us and they're shaking their tails. So our idea is to have this on one's table or in the entrance to one's home and welcoming you, making you feel wanted, basically.
If something is closely resembles a human but is not exactly moving like a human, it starts to look very creepy. And we have enough lovely humans around, and we think that we should give these abilities to objects, not trying to imitate humans, but make these objects become more expressive in that way exactly.
We have our own mythology that really emphasizes on going out to the field to really go into details. This is really important for us, so we believe innovation is in the details.
We sit with animators and theater experts, actors, choreographers, so it's not something that's scientifically based on some other discipline, but it's inspired from people that already deal with expressive motion all of their lives.
We asked people to tell us which emotions they see in each of the gestures. Whenever it looked forward, the perception was of a positive emotion, and whenever the robot was withdrawing, there was perception of a negative emotion. Very clean and interesting results.
This humanistic way of thinking comes from social science, it comes from many other disciplines. It's about philosophy and how people interacted with technology over the years, and what does it mean to give away agency to the technology and let the technology make a decision for me. They can't just say, no, technology is just technology, it has no, responsibility in the world, the user makes their own decision, and that's not true, that's very naive to think this way. Technology is very influential, and we have to put much more thinking into the type of technology that we're creating.
One of the aspects of our startup-y culture is kind of a lack of hierarchy. We don't like discipline. We don't respect authority. And that's, I think, a very important part of the Israeli ethos that I think just plays out all the way going through the army. The military was seen to be the opposite of startups, the opposite of innovation. Very big, very structured, very hierarchical, very top-down, not innovative. And yet the military has been a huge part of our story.
Basically, the Israeli Defense Forces look at hierarchy different than other militaries around the world to begin with. Specifically with regards to tech, I think we had to understand that we could still tell people where to go, but many times we cannot tell them how to get there, simply because nobody has done it ever. Or even worse, sometimes you have to tell people to try to achieve something that somewhere in the back of your mind you think is almost impossible. In this kind of environment, hierarchy has to change.
לדעת שאת אלוהים, לא מוותרות לעולם.
Can you work in a collaborative environment? Can you control your ego so that you can achieve things with a larger group of individuals? And so in many ways, organizations like 8200 are the closest to meritocracy that I've seen. And when you create this kind of environment, sometimes magic happens.
We are here at the C4I department of the IDF, and we are responsible for making computer systems for all of the IDF. The army here doesn't look like the army in the movies. We give them a lot of responsibility. You can have creativity in a complete hierarchy, and they know that they have the freedom to say to me anything and almost in any way. They can tell me that I talk bullshit, and they can tell me that I'm wrong, and I accept it. And this is what makes this place so great.
These young people, 21, 22, are being given tremendous amounts of authority that there's no way they could get in civilian life. And you come out and you've had all this management experience and dealing with real-world dilemmas and decisions. So you're ready to take on the challenges of startups.
I had no background in drones whatsoever. I just I went into an electronics shop in Toronto to buy a juicer, and I saw this drone toy. This was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. So I bought it instead of the juicer. Ended up to be the best investment I ever made. There is a definite advantage hiring an engineer that has a background in the army, and almost everybody in Israel goes to the army. You know the person is responsible, you know they're independent, they can work in a team. Those are the things that you look for in a person, and we get those things for free. So this is basically our R&D facility. All the engineers are set up here, different departments, mechanics, electronics, software. They're building drones, basically. That's what we're doing. Everything needs to come together here, from the body and the PCB and all the engines and the electronic speed controllers. We saw that there was a big gap that could be fulfilled, and maximizing the potential from these aircrafts if we took it and made it out into a tool where this thing actually does work. One of our big projects was a giant oil spill in Israel. Very quickly, we were the ones managing the entire operation because we could fly nonstop. And we just took regular pictures of the area and send it to everybody's phone, and the surveyors in the field would walk around with this fresh aerial of what's going on, and they could better manage what was going on. It was a good example of how drones are used for good things and not bad. Our vision was to create a box that sits somewhere and can launch and land missions by itself, not just in security or mapping or emergency response, but everything combined. The docking station serves several purposes. It protects the drone from the outside environment, whether it's really hot, really cold, or it's dusty, or it's corroded, or it's raining. Second is replacing the batteries, and also the sensors, thus creating different applications that can be used in different scenarios. If you're flying on a mission and you're running security with a video camera, and then you want to switch and go to do mapping, the drone lands itself in the docking station, and then you have the sensor replaced, and then you have a different tool. Turning it from a toy to a tool, there's a lot of technology involved, and most of the components in the market today are not fitted for an aircraft that does real work. But everybody's an engineer in Israel. I mean, we don't really have anything else to do here. If you're in the desert, we don't have a lot of natural resources, so that's our resource, innovation. That kind of came the mentality, just like you have mining cities in Australia, fabrication cities in China. We're a startup nation, that's what we are.
I think every country is trying to become a global innovation leader. And I actually think that the countries that are more likely to win this race are the ones that do a better job of not doing it by themselves. What happens is entrepreneurs like to build companies with their buddies from their army unit or whatever. We got to break out of what seems natural and do something unnatural, which is to found companies from people with other countries, other languages, other cultures.
If you're able to find the people who are entrepreneurial in spirit, then they really can do this almost anywhere in the world. Because if you think about it, entrepreneurship is about solving problems. And the bigger the problems are, the more substantial the solution.
I've been saying this for years, and I totally believe that because of the characteristics of Palestinian society, that for me it's obvious that the economy of the future here should be a knowledge-based, technology-focused economy. There's a 99% literacy rate, high percentages of people who speak foreign languages, the fact that people are very tech-savvy and capable. And so we've been steadily working at that, since 2007. Mercy Corps is a global relief and development organization that works in about 40 countries around the world, helping out in the post-crisis response area and helps to transition things toward development. We've been here since the mid-1980s and in Gaza since about 2006. In both places, they have a lot of challenges, but the most obvious ones are political. You know, in the West Bank, you tend to have barriers for movement inside of the West Bank and constant friction and often clashes inside of the West Bank between cities. To move from Ramallah to Hebron, for example, is often a day-long ordeal, you know, with lots of checkpoints and things along the ways. Whereas in Gaza, it's a totally closed economy. There is, you know, constantly hanging over people the threat of war. Every 2 years or so, we tend to have a large-scale conflict between the Israelis and the factions inside of Gaza. You know, there is that, but you can be in Gaza City and you feel at times like you're in any other place, any other city in the world. Young people in Gaza are hungry for opportunities. They're hungry to have some possibility for creating a better future for themselves. And yeah, Gaza is amongst the most innovative that I've seen. You know, when the fuel shortages start, they start running their cars on cooking oil, right? So, I mean, they're innovating to survive. I think because of the closure, because of the repeated shocks of conflict, because they've been disconnected from the world for the last 10 years, and because of certain structural issues in the education system, they're several years disconnected from what's happening at the cutting edge of technology. Beyond that, it's things like you know, electricity shortages are a major challenge in Gaza. Internet is surprisingly not one of the challenges. We sit on top of a high-speed internet line, and so all of the people inside of our community, you know, are able to access internet consistently.
A budding tech ecosystem is not what first comes to mind when thinking of the Gaza Strip, but the Palestinian enclave just made startup history. Gaza's first ever hackathon took place this weekend. With a focus on software, 19 teams and over 65 hackers presented live product demos by the close of the 36-hour event.
So Gaza Sky Geeks is an initiative that we started back in 2011 together with Google. It started out as technology and entrepreneurial ecosystem building program. We did lots of events, hackathons, startup weekends to really generate buzz and energy around the idea of creating opportunities for yourself. We saw that technology would create this window to the world around them and create opportunities for income and for a more sustainable future for themselves.
I learned about startups at Gaza Sky Geeks with Little Sister Big Sister program. My startup is a mobile app and a website for pregnant women that get them to know their life better. It gives them a special content, an online store, and everything that she will need with her new child.
Being here and interacting with other startups and working on Waste 500 made us believe more in our company and how much it is possible. Even if we're from Gaza and it's hard over there and we only have electricity for 8 hours, we can do this.
What has been done with Gaza Sky Geeks is nothing short of defying the impossible. I really believe that. They will challenge the limits of what entrepreneurship can do in some of the toughest places in the world.
I think they want to prove that they can succeed, and they want to prove that they have the rights to be part of this global world. And now they can export their capabilities, they can export their know-how without any Israeli barriers. So they know now what this technology gave them the ability to bypass all the siege and all the barriers from the Israeli side.
Mobile technologies have revolutionized life in the Palestinian territories. You know, the vast majority of the people in Gaza, which is a tiny territory, most people have never left it and have no prospect ever of doing so. So you can imagine when you can visit websites or engage on social media in something held in the palm of your hand, that's a massive change. At the same time as it's become more possible for people to talk to each other virtually, it's become actually more difficult for them to have day-to-day contact. One thing that Palestinians will accuse other Palestinians of sometimes is talking about normalization. You know, they're saying we must never ever accept the situation in which we find ourselves as normal. But obviously if you're trying to run a business, that's what you want. You want a normal situation.
Normalization is making the relation between the Palestinian and the Israeli as normal. So as there is no conflict, there's nothing you can do business, you can deal with, you can go with, you can shop with. This is not accepted. There is a conflict with the Israelis. We are not dealing with them. We are not doing business with them. But if you are living in the same city, what other opportunities do you have?
This is the area where you can say East and West mix. This is the imaginary boundary. On the right are the Arab neighborhoods, let's say, and on the left is the Israeli neighborhoods. You look at the buildings, look at the streets here, you can see a huge difference. We and the Israelis pay the same municipal taxes, we do pay the same taxes on work, everything. We receive the same benefits in terms of health, but not in municipal services. The situation is getting better. Great efforts are being achieved from the current Jerusalem municipality, but it's not enough. It's complicated beyond description. Residents of East Jerusalem should receive the Guinness World Book of Records of surviving. And now we've arrived at our destination. Let's jump.
The community in East Jerusalem, they are Palestinians, and they are staying in Jerusalem as residents and not citizens. We don't have an Israeli passport. We are living with travel document. And at the same time, we have a kind of Jordanian passport where the nationality at that passport is none. You are not a Palestinian, you are not an Israeli, and you are not a Jordanian. So this is why Palestinian community in East Jerusalem felt between the cracks. You can't get support from the Palestinian government because they can't support you. And the Israelis, they can't support you because you are not an Israeli resident.
It's a little bit easier for us in terms of access. We get access all over the country because of our temporary Israeli ID. Like a Palestinian trying to contact an Israeli company or Israeli venture capitalist, you get asked a question, and it was asked to me, did you serve in the Israeli army? Like, come on, seriously, is that a question you ask a Palestinian? So the answer was no, and they said, sorry, we can't fund you. We went also to Ramallah, tried with the VCs in Ramallah, which is the West Bank in Palestine, and we got the same nice answer every time. You're not a Palestinian resident. How can we help you? How can we support you?
So among the years, there was pressure on this community in East Jerusalem. And yes, all the talented, all the capable, all the investors, all the professionals, they are not here anymore. They just left the city. We as a Palestinian living in East Jerusalem, I can't be as a part of the startup nation. I want to be, but I'm not of that nation. I'm not part of that nation. So my idea was, if we can have the second edition to be a startup region, by that, the whole nation and all other parties like Palestinian, we can all start now working together to boost and to develop the region. Today for them, JEST is the home. So if he wants any kind of support, he will go to his home and will ask for the service, and there is someone who will try to do his best to help him. Giving them the capacity building opportunity and the training and the professional trainers to be part of an ecosystem, and giving them the network. So he can go and join any activity in the western part of the city. And they will ask him, from where you are? I'm coming from JEST. So he said, now I have an identity to go and to join and to succeed.
Only 17% of women in East Jerusalem are participating in the workforce. I was very frustrated. All my colleagues, they don't work. So I started the idea of my Pink Electronics to train women on certain skills that will allow them to work from home. Even men did not succeed in this city to take their chance. From JEST, I had now a mentor who's mentoring my business and helping me to grow. And this will help them in their own businesses too.
Today we can feel that the community is more connected. They are looking at the Israeli market, how they can succeed in the Israeli market, how they can integrate in the Israeli market, and how they can export their capabilities to the Israeli market.
Israel is known as the startup nation. It's not because of the army or because they're smarter or anything. I think in my mind because there is a huge ecosystem of encouragement. They have so many accelerators. In the west side, we don't have an accelerator. We have an incubator, one, just. And that's it. Unless we show some success stories, then things will change. But you cannot show success unless you have an ecosystem, and you cannot have an ecosystem unless you have success. So that's the deal.
The Israeli high-tech today lacks over 6,000 engineers. The main human capital resource to bridge this gap is the Arab community and the ultra-Orthodox Jews.
In my dream, I see like an integrated society, but sort of like an immigration. It takes like a generation or something like that.
I am a strong believer that a Palestinian state is in the making. We don't have to wait for the end of the occupation to start improving the economy. We could start earlier. The occupation is going to end. This could be an example for the rest of the West Bank and perhaps the rest of the Middle East.